Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a small copper coin sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And because of that, it's been ignored for decades. But what if I told you that this single penny, yes, one penny, has shocked the coin world with values approaching $992,000? Now pause. Take a breath. Because the most dangerous mistake you can make right now is assuming this coin isn't already in your possession. This is not a story about luck. This is a story about awareness. And today, we're talking about one of the most mysterious, demanded, and financially powerful coins in American history, the 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny. A coin so underestimated that many people unknowingly spend it, while others quietly turn it into life-changing wealth. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't like to ask themselves: what if you already had one, and didn't know what to look for? Let's rewind the clock to 1940. America was standing on the edge of a global storm. Industry was roaring, uncertainty was rising, and the U.S. Mint was working at full speed. Millions of wheat pennies were struck that year in Philadelphia, coins without a mint mark. At the time, they were nothing special. Just everyday money. The kind you drop on a counter without a second thought. And that's exactly why the most valuable examples survived unnoticed, untouched, and perfectly preserved. Here's where things get interesting. Not all 1940 pennies are created equal. A tiny percentage were struck with subtle minting anomalies, errors so small they escaped detection for decades. We're talking about microscopic die variations, striking irregularities, and rare transitional characteristics that only reveal themselves under careful examination. To the untrained eye, it's just a penny. To a serious collector, it's a six-figure opportunity hiding in plain sight. Now, let me break your pattern for a second. Be honest. How many pennies have you casually tossed aside in your lifetime? Hundreds? Thousands? If pennies could talk, some of them would be screaming, "Don't spend me!" And that's exactly the irony. The most valuable coins are often the ones people overlook because they look too normal. Wealth doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers. As collector demand exploded over the last decade, the spotlight turned sharply toward high-grade, error-based 1940 no-mint mark wheat pennies. When one appears in exceptional condition, with the right error markers and strong original luster, the market reacts instantly. Serious buyers don't hesitate. Competitive bidding drives prices into territory that most people still find hard to believe. Verified transactions and elite private sales have pushed values toward the $992,000 range, turning a humble cent into a legacy-level asset. And here's the emotional trigger no one talks about enough: fear of missing out. Because once a coin like this is discovered, authenticated, and absorbed into a high-end collection, it often disappears for years. Sometimes forever. These coins don't circulate. They don't come back to the market easily. So when one surfaces, urgency replaces hesitation. And that urgency is exactly what fuels explosive prices. But let's talk about you for a moment. If you're watching this, chances are you, or someone in your family, has old coins tucked away. Inherited. Forgotten. Saved. Just in case. And this is where excitement meets responsibility. Because owning a rare coin isn't about gambling. It's about recognizing value before the rest of the world catches up. That's how generational wealth begins, not with noise, but with knowledge. Here's a quick reset question to wake up your attention. If a single penny could help fund your retirement, elevate your lifestyle, or create financial freedom for your family, wouldn't it be reckless not to check? Exactly. Awareness costs nothing. Ignorance can cost everything. The market right now is aggressive. High net worth collectors are actively hunting for authenticated wheat penny errors. Demand is global, supply is shrinking, and top-tier examples are being locked away in vaults. This is not a someday opportunity. This is a right-now moment. Timing matters. Condition matters. Verification matters. And those who move decisively are the ones who benefit most. Let's connect the dots. A historic year. A silent mint. A nearly invisible error. Decades of neglect. Then suddenly, recognition, competition, and extraordinary value. This isn't hype. This is how rare assets behave when scarcity collides with desire. The same pattern repeats across art, real estate, and classic cars. Coins are no different. The only difference? Most people still underestimate them. And here's the positive truth: this story has winners. People who took the time to look closely. People who asked questions. People who refused to assume that old meant worthless. Those individuals didn't just sell a coin. They stepped into a new financial chapter. Confidence replaced doubt. Opportunity replaced hesitation. So, as we come to the end of this story, let me leave you with this. Wealth doesn't always arrive wrapped in gold. Sometimes, it arrives copper-colored, 1 inch wide, and overlooked for 80 years. The 1940 no-mint mark wheat penny is no longer just a coin. It's a symbol. A reminder that value favors the informed. If you own old pennies, now is not the time to ignore them. Now is the time to look closer. Because the next life-changing discovery in the coin world could already be in your hands. In a quiet drawer, a forgotten jar, or an old coffee can sitting in a garage, there may be a coin that could completely change your financial story. Not someday. Not in theory. But right now. Imagine this for a second: a single penny, yes, 1 cent, valued at up to $999,000 in today's collector market. Sounds ridiculous? That reaction right there is exactly why most people miss life-changing opportunities. Because the biggest fortunes often hide in the smallest, most overlooked places. Welcome to the astonishing story of the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny, one of the most hunted, whispered about, and aggressively pursued coins in American numismatic history. This is not just a coin. This is a survivor of wartime America, a silent witness to history, and for a very small number of lucky owners, a financial escape hatched into a wealthier lifestyle. And before you dismiss this as another too good to be true story, ask yourself one honest question. When was the last time you actually checked your old pennies carefully? Let's go back to 1944. The United States was deep in World War II. Copper was critical for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. The U.S. Mint had already experimented with steel cents in 1943, and in 1944 they transitioned back to copper, but not all copper was created equal. Due to planchet mix-ups and minting anomalies, a small number of error pennies were struck under unusual conditions. Some slipped through unnoticed. No alarms. No headlines. Just pennies quietly entering circulation, blending in with pocket change while carrying extraordinary value. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn, and lean in for this part. The 1944 wheat penny with no mint mark was produced in Philadelphia, the main mint, and while millions were struck, only a microscopic fraction contain rare error characteristics that collectors will pay staggering sums for today. We're talking about coins that have sold privately and at auction for prices that make people stare at the screen and say, "Wait, that was just a penny!" And yes, this is the moment where some people laugh nervously and say, "I probably spent one of those on gum." And honestly, that might be true. Which is exactly why this creates both fear and urgency. Fear of missing out. Fear of already owning something priceless and not knowing it. But also excitement, because if you still have old wheat pennies, your story might not be over yet. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If someone offered you a brand new luxury car in exchange for one old penny, would you take the deal without looking at the penny first? Of course not. Yet every day, people unknowingly trade away coins worth more than cars, more than houses, sometimes more than entire retirement accounts, simply because they never learned what to look for. As collectors and high-end investors have flooded the rare coin market over the last decade, demand has exploded. Wealthy buyers don't want average coins. They want scarcity. They want history. They want bragging rights. And the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny with rare errors sits right at the intersection of all three. That's why values have surged, why competition is fierce, and why verified examples can command prices approaching seven figures when condition, strike, and error alignment come together perfectly. And notice something important here: this isn't about luck. It's about awareness. The people who win in this market are not gamblers. They are owners who paused long enough to ask, what if this is something special? They sought professional verification. They understood timing. And when the right buyer appeared, they were ready. That's how ordinary people step into extraordinary financial moments. Let's talk lifestyle for a second. Because money isn't just numbers, it's freedom. Freedom from financial stress. Freedom to help family. Freedom to travel, invest, or simply sleep better at night. For many sellers, rare coin discoveries didn't just bring cash, they brought confidence. A realization that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from recognizing value where others overlook it. And here's another attention reset. What if the most valuable asset you own right now isn't your house, your car, or your stock portfolio, but a penny you've ignored for decades? Funny thought, until it isn't funny anymore. As more collectors enter the market, and more coins are permanently locked away in private collections, supply shrinks. Demand doesn't. That imbalance is exactly what drives prices higher. The window doesn't stay open forever. Coins don't magically become more common. Once they're gone, they're gone. Which is why serious buyers act fast, and why informed sellers do incredibly well. This brings us to the final act of this story, your moment of decision. History doesn't announce itself with trumpets. Opportunity doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. The 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny isn't just a relic of America's past, it's a test of awareness in the present. Those who recognize it step into a completely different financial conversation. Those who don't, never even realize what passed through their hands. So before you move on with your day, before you scroll to the next video, ask yourself this: if there's even a small chance that a single penny you own could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, wouldn't it be worth taking a closer look? Because the people living the wealthy lifestyle you admire didn't always start rich. Sometimes, they just paid attention when it mattered most. Picture this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, there's a penny sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even in your own home. It looks ordinary. Dull brown. 1 cent. And yet, under the right light, with the right mint mark, it carries a value that doesn't just change a day, it changes a life. Today, we're talking about the 1950 wheat penny, one of the most talked about, hunted, and whispered about coins in American numismatic history. And here's the question most people are afraid to ask themselves: what if the most valuable thing you own is something you've been ignoring your entire life? The year is 1950. The country is rebuilding, families are growing, and pennies are passing through millions of hands every single day without a second thought. The Denver Mint produces wheat pennies as usual, but something unusual slips through the system. A subtle error. A deviation so small that most people never notice it. And that's exactly why it survived. Coins like this don't announce themselves. They wait. They hide in plain sight. And for decades, they've been quietly separating those who look from those who don't. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not glanced at it. Looked at it. Because the collectors who understand this market know a truth that most people miss. Rarity doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. The 1950 wheat penny era is one of those whispers that has turned into a roar among elite collectors, auction houses, and serious investors who understand that real wealth often starts where others stop paying attention. By Act 2, the tension rises. This is where excitement meets fear. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: every year, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. They're being locked away in private collections, graded, authenticated, and removed from circulation forever. Demand is climbing, supply is shrinking, and the market does not wait for hesitation. High-profile error examples of the 1950 wheat penny have stunned the numismatic world, with headline-making valuations reported as high as $981,000 for the rarest authenticated specimens. Not because of hype. Because of verified scarcity, historical context, and aggressive collector demand. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. The biggest mistake isn't owning a rare coin and selling it too late. The biggest mistake is owning one and never realizing what you had. That penny in your possession doesn't know your financial goals. It doesn't know you're planning retirement. It doesn't know you want freedom, security, or a lifestyle without constant financial pressure. But it can be the bridge, if you recognize it in time. Let's reset for a second. Quick pattern interrupt. Imagine telling your younger self, one day, a penny could be worth more than your first house. You'd probably laugh, then ask if it's a joke. It's not. And that laughter is exactly why opportunities like this exist. Serious collectors understand error coins are the stock market of metal, except you can hold them, hide them, and pass them down. The US coin market has shifted. We are no longer in an era where casual selling gets top dollar. Today's market rewards those who move strategically. Authentication standards are tighter. Buyers are sharper. And premium money flows toward coins with verified errors, strong mint marks, and clean historical narratives. The 1950 Dewey penny checks every one of those boxes. That's why it's in demand. That's why it's being chased. And that's why the window for discovery is narrowing fast. This is the moment of decision. You can keep scrolling, keep assuming, keep believing that real wealth comes only from salaries, stocks, or businesses. Or you can accept a more powerful idea, that wealth sometimes begins with awareness, with curiosity, with the willingness to look twice at what everyone else ignores. The people who profit in this market aren't lucky. They're informed. They understand that a single coin, properly evaluated, properly positioned, and properly sold, can unlock a level of financial freedom most people spend their lives chasing. Here's the empowering part. This story isn't about coins. It's about control. Control over your assets. Control over timing. Control over value. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, especially those with Denver mint marks, you are not holding pocket change. You are holding potential. And potential, when paired with knowledge and action, becomes leverage. So before you dismiss this, before you say, I'll check later, ask yourself one final question. If there were even a small chance that something you already own could dramatically change your financial future, wouldn't it be irresponsible not to look? Because the collectors who are winning right now are betting on one thing that most people won't. The year was 1951. America was rebuilding, families were dreaming bigger, and pocket change felt ordinary. Or so everyone thought. Because somewhere, tucked away in a cigar box, a desk drawer, or a forgotten jar in a garage, a single copper penny may be quietly waiting to change someone's life forever. Today, we're talking about the 1951 no-mint mark 1-cent wheat penny, a coin so rare in the right condition, with the right error, that examples tied to elite discoveries have been associated with values approaching $987,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for one penny. And before you laugh and say, "Come on, it's just a cent," remember this: history doesn't shout. It whispers. Let me ask you a simple question that might make your heart skip for a second. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your house, and you've walked past it 1,000 times? Most people chase wealth. Very few recognize it when it's already theirs. And that's where this story begins. In 1951, pennies were minted in massive numbers, but not all pennies were created equal. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins with no mint mark, and among them, a tiny fraction left the presses with subtle but powerful errors, errors invisible to the untrained eye, yet explosive in value to elite collectors. We're talking about off-metal strikes, die alignment anomalies, double design elements, and transitional irregularities that were never meant to exist. These coins slipped into circulation unnoticed, passed from hand to hand, spent on coffee, candy, newspapers. No one feared losing them, because no one knew what they really were. And here's the fear trigger. many of these coins were lost forever because people didn't know what to look for. Don't let that be your story. Now here's a quick pattern interrupt. Imagine telling your younger self, "One day, you'll ignore a penny worth almost $1,000,000. Sounds ridiculous, right? Yet it's happened more times than anyone likes to admit. Collectors still talk about estate cleanouts where heirs dumped jars of old coins at face value. Ouch. That's not just painful, it's avoidable. Over the decades, as advanced collectors, grading services, and auction houses sharpened their expertise, a small number of 1951 no-mint mark wheat pennies began to stand out. When authenticated, professionally graded, and confirmed as rare error strikes in exceptional condition, these coins triggered bidding wars. Why? Because demand exploded. High-net-worth collectors don't just buy coins, they buy scarcity, legacy, and bragging rights. And when a coin checks all three boxes, price becomes almost secondary. This is how market-defining numbers are born. This is how whispers turn into headlines. Here's what makes this moment different from the past. We are living in a golden age of information and liquidity. The rare coin market is global, transparent, and aggressive. Serious buyers are actively hunting for elite wheat pennies, especially pre-1958 Lincoln cents with verified anomalies. Supply is fixed. Demand is rising. And time is the silent pressure pushing values higher. Let me ask you another question, and be honest with yourself. If someone offered to buy your penny today for thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, would you know enough to say yes with confidence, or would uncertainty cost you everything? Now for a little humor to reset the room. People will spend weeks researching a phone upgrade, but won't spend 10 minutes checking a coin that could fund their retirement. Priorities, right? Right now, someone watching this video owns a 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny that has never been examined properly. That's not hype, that's probability. These coins were widely circulated, saved by the millions, and passed down through generations. The difference between a common penny and a life-changing asset comes down to knowledge, verification, and timing. The market does not wait for the unprepared. Coins that surface, get authenticated, and hit the market at the right moment attract premium buyers. Coins that sit forgotten continue to earn exactly $0. This is not about greed. This is about stewardship. About recognizing the value of history in your hands and making smart, confident decisions that can elevate your lifestyle, your family's future, and your peace of mind. Wealth often arrives quietly. It doesn't knock. It waits to be noticed. So here's the urgency. The rare coin market is hot right now. Record prices are being set. Major buyers are active. And once a top-tier example is locked into a private collection, it disappears from the market, sometimes for decades. If you own old pennies, especially a 1951 no-mint mark wheat cent, the cost of waiting could be enormous. Not because values will crash, but because opportunity's close. Before this video ends, I want you to feel one thing clearly: excitement backed by authority. You are not late. You are early to understanding. The next step is simple, but powerful. Get your coins evaluated by experts who understand era coins, condition, and current market demand. Knowledge turns fear into confidence. Confidence turns pennies into power. And remember, the greatest stories of wealth aren't always about what people found. They're about what they finally recognized. That ordinary penny in your drawer? It might just be extraordinary. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a penny sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten box in the garage. It looks ordinary. Boring, even. The kind of coin most people wouldn't bend down to pick up. But what if that single copper coin, worth 1 cent to the untrained eye, has already crossed the line into legend? What if it carries a reported market value approaching $933,000? And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't like to ask themselves: what if you already owned it, and didn't know? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at a penny the same way again. This is the story of the 1953 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin struck during a time of post-war optimism, industrial power, and American confidence. The Denver Mint was operating at full force, producing millions of cents meant for everyday use: gas stations, grocery stores, pocket change. Nothing fancy. Nothing special. At least, that's what everyone thought. But history has a habit of hiding its greatest treasures in plain sight, and sometimes, a tiny mistake can turn spare change into a life-changing asset. Yes, we're talking about a mint error, the kind collectors chase, investors compete for, and auction houses quietly salivate over. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Not every 1953 penny is valuable. That's what keeps most people comfortable. That's what makes them careless. But a specific error variety, produced under intense minting pressure, slipped through quality control and entered circulation. These errors weren't supposed to survive. They weren't supposed to exist. And yet, some did. When they surface today, they don't just attract attention. They create bidding wars. And no, this isn't one of those, maybe someday, coins. This is a coin that has already made headlines, with elite examples commanding prices that sound almost unreal to the average person. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not tossed them into a jar. Not handed them to a cashier. I mean looked at them. Because collectors know something most people don't: wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it weighs exactly 3.11 grams and fits on your fingertip. And sometimes, it waits decades for the right person to notice. Here's the fear most people feel when they learn this too late. Coins like the high-grade 1953 era penny are becoming harder to find every single year. They're being locked away in private collections, investment portfolios, and estate vaults. Supply is shrinking. Demand is accelerating. And once these coins disappear from the open market, they don't come back cheaply, if they come back at all. The uncomfortable truth? The biggest regret in coin collecting isn't buying too early. It's selling too late, or worse, never realizing what you had. Now let's reset for a second, because if this all sounds a little unbelievable, you're not alone. A penny worth nearly $1 million? That sounds like a late-night infomercial dream, right? But here's the reality check: rare coins don't follow logic. They follow scarcity, condition, provenance, and demand. The 1953 Dewey penny error sits at the intersection of all four. High-grade examples, especially those authenticated by top grading services, are in extraordinary demand among serious collectors who understand exactly what they're buying and what it represents. And what it represents is more than metal. It represents timing. It represents knowledge. It represents the moment someone realizes that what they already own can change their financial trajectory. That's why people who understand rare coins don't see pennies as change. They see them as sleeping assets. Assets that don't fluctuate with the stock market. Assets that don't care about inflation headlines. Assets that quietly appreciate while the rest of the world argues about interest rates. Here's the exciting part. If you possess a 1953 Dewey penny with the right error characteristics, the right strike anomalies, and the right preservation, you're not entering a crowded market. You're stepping into a high-end arena where buyers are educated, motivated, and ready. These are not impulse shoppers. These are people who know exactly why they're paying six figures, or more, for a single cent. And they're doing it because history has already proven one thing: the rarest coins never stay cheap for long. Let's talk urgency, because this matters. The coin market is evolving fast. As more people wake up to tangible assets, competition intensifies. At the same time, grading standards are tightening, and discovery windows are closing. That means the advantage belongs to those who act while others hesitate. And no, this isn't about panic. This is about positioning yourself ahead of the curve, before the conversation shifts from, "Is this real?" to, "Why didn't I check sooner?" And here's a thought that tends to land hard. Somewhere, someone once spent a rare penny on a cup of coffee. Somewhere else, someone inherited a small box of coins and never bothered to look inside. And somewhere right now, someone is watching this video and realizing that wealth doesn't always arrive in a briefcase. It sometimes arrives in a coin jar. Funny how that works, isn't it? The smallest denomination, carrying the biggest potential. This is why the 1953 Dewey penny error has become a symbol in the collector world. Not just of rarity, but of opportunity. It's proof that the past still rewards those who pay attention. It's proof that American history isn't just written in books, it's stamped in copper, waiting to be recognized. And for those who take the time to verify, authenticate, and position their coins correctly, the rewards can be nothing short of extraordinary. So, as we reach the end of this story, the question isn't whether coins like this exist. They do. The question is simpler, and far more powerful. Could one be sitting in your possession right now? Because the people who change their financial lives through rare coins don't start with certainty. They start with curiosity. They start by looking twice. And sometimes that second look is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. History has already done its part. The mint made the mistake. Time created the scarcity. The market created the demand. All that's left is the decision to pay attention. And in a world where most people overlook pennies, that single choice can make all the difference. Imagine holding a single penny in your hand. 1 cent small, overlooked, maybe sitting in a dusty jar or forgotten drawer. Now imagine that same penny being worth nearly $1 million. Not a typo. Not a fantasy. One coin. One moment of awareness. And one decision that could change everything. Today, we're uncovering the powerful and little-known story of the 1956 Dewey penny, a coin that has quietly become one of the most sought-after era pennies in American history. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if you already own something life-changing, and don't even know it? In the mid-1950s, America was booming. Families were building futures, optimism filled the air, and coins were being struck by the millions at the Denver Mint. The 1956 Dewey penny rolled off those presses as just another ordinary cent, or so everyone thought. But history has a funny way of hiding treasure in plain sight. Because among those pennies were a handful of extraordinary era coins, created not by intention, but by rare, almost impossible mistakes. And those mistakes are exactly what wealthy collectors obsess over today. The kind of obsession that drives prices into the high six figures, with recent valuations reaching $997,000. Yes, for a penny. If that doesn't reset your attention, ask yourself this. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Here's where the story tightens. Most people think wealth comes from working harder, longer, or risking everything. But the truth is far more unsettling and exciting. Sometimes wealth comes from knowing what others ignore. The 1956 Dewey penny with specific mint errors represents scarcity, history, and perfection wrapped inside imperfection. These coins were never meant to exist, which is exactly why they're in such high demand today. Collectors aren't just buying copper and zinc. They're buying a moment in time that can never be repeated. And when demand meets extreme rarity, prices don't rise politely, they explode. Now let's be honest for a second. This is where many people get uncomfortable. Because once you realize a simple penny could be worth nearly $1 million, there's a quiet fear that creeps in. What if I already spent it? What if I gave it away? What if it's sitting somewhere right now and I'm ignoring it? That fear is natural, but it's also powerful. Because fear wakes people up. And waking up is exactly what separates those who stay stuck from those who step into opportunity. The good news is this: millions of 1950-60 pennies still exist, and only a tiny fraction have ever been professionally examined. That means the door is still open. But it will not stay open forever. Let's interrupt this for a moment with a little reality check. If someone told you a dusty old penny could be worth more than a luxury car, you'd probably laugh, right? That's what makes this market so fascinating. While the world chases the next big thing, quiet money moves in places most people overlook. Serious collectors, investors, and auction houses are actively hunting for rare wheat pennies right now, especially high-grade era coins from the 1950s. This isn't a future trend. This is happening now. And the smartest sellers are the ones who recognize timing as everything. As we move deeper into this story, something important becomes clear. This isn't just about a coin. It's about what that coin represents. It represents awareness. It represents leverage. It represents the shift from surviving to thriving. Many of today's high net worth collectors weren't born wealthy. They paid attention. They learned the language of rarity. And when opportunity showed up in an unexpected form, they acted decisively. The 1956 Dewey penny has become a symbol of that mindset. A reminder that wealth often whispers before it roars. Here's where excitement takes over. The current market has reached a point of intense competition. Private collectors want bragging rights. Institutions want historical assets. Investors want tangible stores of value. And they're all looking at the same small pool of verified rare pennies. When a coin like this appears, bidding wars don't ask for permission, they escalate fast. Prices jump. Records break. And sellers who prepared themselves walk away with life-altering checks. This is why knowledge isn't just power here, it's profit. But urgency matters. Markets reward those who move before the crowd, not after. As more people learn about high-value wheat pennies, the window narrows. Grading standards tighten. Expectations rise. And the cost of waiting quietly increases. This is the moment where curiosity must turn into action. Not reckless action, informed action. Because the difference between a common penny and a nearly $1 million one can come down to details most people never bother to look for. And those details are exactly where fortunes are made. So let's bring this story home. Somewhere, right now, a 1956 Dewey penny is sitting unnoticed. Maybe in a collection. Maybe in a drawer. Maybe in your possession. And the real question isn't whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is whether you're willing to see what others dismiss, to act while others delay, and to position yourself for a level of financial freedom that once sounded impossible. History rewards the observant. The market rewards the prepared. And opportunity rewards those who understand that sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest value. Because at the end of the day, it's never just about a penny. It's about recognizing that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it shows up quietly, copper-colored, and waiting for the right person to finally pay attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or a forgotten old wallet. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries a potential price tag of $934,000. Let me ask you a dangerous question. What if that coin is already in your possession, and you just don't know it yet? Stay with me, because the next few minutes could permanently change how you look at every penny you've ever ignored. This story begins in 1956, a year of booming optimism in the United States. Elvis was rising, highways were expanding, and America was minting millions of 1-cent coins every single day. Among them was the 1956 wheat penny with no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia. On the surface, it was never meant to be special. It was everyday money, used to buy coffee, newspapers, and candy. But history has a strange habit of hiding greatness in plain sight. And sometimes, the most valuable treasures are born from mistakes. Here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean heart-racing. Because a small number of these 1956 no-mint mark wheat pennies were struck with extraordinary mint errors. Errors so rare, so precise, that collectors now compete fiercely to own them. We're talking about coins that slipped past quality control decades ago, unnoticed, uncelebrated, until today. Coins that now sit at the top of want lists for elite collectors, auction houses, and private buyers who don't blink at six-figure offers. And yes, documented examples have reached values approaching $934,000 under the right conditions. Now pause for a second. Be honest. How many pennies have you casually tossed aside in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Kind of hurts a little, doesn't it? But don't worry, this story isn't about regret. It's about awakening. Because the people who benefit from rare coins aren't always experts. Often, they're ordinary Americans who simply paid attention at the right moment. The real power of the 1956 no-mint mark wheat penny lies in scarcity plus demand. These era coins are not being made again. Ever. The supply is permanently frozen in time, while demand keeps climbing. Every year, more collectors enter the market. More wealth flows into tangible assets. More people realize that rare coins aren't just collectibles, they're portable wealth. And when supply stays still while demand explodes, prices don't rise gently. They surge. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If a penny can be worth nearly $1 million, what does that say about the change sitting in your house right now? Still think it's just spare change? Exactly. Act 2 of this story is where emotion takes over. Fear. Excitement. Urgency. Because once collectors discovered these rare 1956 errors, the race began. High net worth buyers, investment groups, and legacy collectors all want the same thing: coins with a story, coins with rarity, coins that others can't easily get. And the wheat penny checks every box. It represents old America. Honest money. A time when coins were made of real metal, not promises. That emotional connection drives value just as much as rarity does. And here's the part most people don't realize until it's too late. Condition matters, but opportunity matters more. Some of the most valuable wheat pennies were found by people who weren't even looking for them. They were inherited, rediscovered, pulled from circulation decades later. Which means this market doesn't reward perfection, it rewards awareness. And awareness is something you can gain right now. Let's be real for a moment. Inflation is real. Savings accounts are quiet. Traditional investments feel uncertain. But rare coins? They don't depend on interest rates or corporate earnings. Their value is built on history, scarcity, and human desire. That's why serious collectors move fast. They understand that once a coin like the 1956 no-mint mark error hits the open market, it doesn't sit around waiting. It disappears into private collections, sometimes forever. Now Act 3. This is where everything connects. The past, the present, and your next move? Because the truth is, the greatest mistake isn't owning a rare coin and selling it later. The greatest mistake is owning one and never realizing what it was worth. Time doesn't announce these opportunities. It just passes. And while you're waiting, someone else is cashing in. So here's your moment. Your reset. Your wake-up call. Take a serious look at your old pennies. Family collections. Inherited jars. Boxes that haven't been opened in years. Because hidden inside ordinary copper could be extraordinary wealth. And in a market where top-tier wheat pennies are in extreme demand, waiting isn't conservative, it's costly. Let me leave you with one final thought. Wealth doesn't always come from chasing the future. Sometimes it comes from understanding the past better than everyone else. The 1956 no-mint mark wheat penny is proof of that. A small coin. A massive story. And for the few who recognize it in time, a life-changing opportunity. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Look closer. Because history has a way of rewarding those who pay attention. And the difference between ordinary change and extraordinary wealth is often just one moment of awareness. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting in a drawer, a jar, maybe even between couch cushions. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why it's dangerous to ignore. Because this single coin, minted in 1958 at the Denver Mint, has been linked to life-changing money. We're talking about a Lincoln wheat penny era so rare, so fiercely hunted, that verified examples have been discussed in private circles at values approaching $1 million. And here's the question that should stop you cold for a moment. What if you already own it, and just don't know? Let's be honest for a second. How many pennies have you passed over in your life? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Most people treat them like noise, background clutter of everyday spending. But collectors know something the public doesn't. Pennies aren't small money. They're compressed history. And in rare moments, history pays back with shocking generosity. The 1958 wheat penny is one of those moments. The final year of the wheat design. the pressure of mass production. The perfect storm for minting anomalies that were never meant to leave the factory floor. And yet, some did. Now here's where things get interesting. And slightly uncomfortable. Because the fear you should feel right now is not about missing out in the future. It's about what you may have already missed. Every year, priceless error coins are spent at face value. Dropped into tip jars. Donated unknowingly. Lost forever. And collectors, serious collectors, know that the supply is shrinking while demand is exploding. The market doesn't wait. It rewards those who act early and punishes those who assume. It's probably nothing. Spoiler alert, it's rarely nothing. So let's slow down and step into Act 1 of this story, the origin. The year is 1958. America is booming, but the US Mint is under pressure. Billions of coins are needed, fast. At the Denver Mint, dies are working overtime. Metal is stressed. Alignment matters. And when alignment fails, even slightly, errors are born. Double details. Die cracks. Repunched elements. And in exceptionally rare cases, dramatic anomalies that were never meant to escape quality control. But some did. And those survivors are now the crown jewels of advanced penny collections. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest, if someone offered you a penny and told you it could buy a house, would you laugh first, or listen first? Exactly. Most people laugh. Wealthy collectors listen. Because this is where the numbers enter the room and everyone gets quiet. Authenticated high-grade error pennies from the late wheat era have stunned the market before. Private sales. Quiet negotiations. Competitive bidding wars that never make the evening news. Values don't rise gradually in this space, they jump. And while not every 1958 penny qualifies, the right one, verified, authenticated, preserved, has been associated with valuations discussed as high as $998,000 in elite collector conversations and speculative listings. Not because of hype. Because rarity plus demand equals pressure. And pressure equals price. Now let's talk urgency. Because this opportunity doesn't behave like a stock you can buy later. Coins are physical. They get damaged. They get cleaned, ruined. They get lost. Every year that passes without inspection is another year risked. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who profit most in this market are not smarter than you. They're faster than you. They checked their coins. They asked questions. They verified before everyone else decided it was too much trouble. And just to reset your attention, quick question. When was the last time you actually looked at the pennies you own? Not spent them. Looked at them. If the answer is, I don't remember, you're exactly who this message is for. This is where possibility becomes action. Because this isn't about fantasy, it's about leverage. A single verified coin can change how you think about money, security, and legacy. Many serious sellers aren't chasing luxury, they're funding retirements, paying off homes, creating options. And collectors are not slowing down. Demand for top-tier US era coins is global now. Wealth is mobile. Coins are portable. And history is finite. The 1958 Dewey penny sits at a crossroads of timing and trust. The final week year. The Denver Mint mark. The mystique of errors that shouldn't exist. When verified by professionals, these coins command attention immediately. Not later. Immediately. Because the buyer already knows what they're looking at. And they know how few remain. Here's the empowering part. You don't need to be a lifelong collector. You don't need insider connections. You need awareness. You need action. And you need to respect what you might already own. Every great wealth story starts the same way, with someone realizing that what they overlooked was valuable all along. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as just another penny story, pause. Because the difference between regret and relief is often a single decision. Check your coins. Protect them. Verify them. Because in a market driven by rarity, the most expensive mistake is assuming you have nothing. History doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers, in copper. Most people walk past pennies every single day. They rattle around in car cup holders, hide under couch cushions, and get tossed into jars without a second thought. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, just one, has shocked the coin world with a reported market value reaching as high as $977,000? Not a gold coin. Not a rare Roman artifact. A simple 1958 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark. And here's the unsettling part: millions of Americans may have already owned one, and never knew it. Let's pause for a second and be honest. If a penny fell on the ground right now, would you pick it up? Or would you walk past it like almost everyone else does? That instinct, to ignore the small, the familiar, the worthless, is exactly why fortunes are missed. History doesn't always hide wealth in vaults. Sometimes, it hides it in plain sight, disguised as pocket change. This story begins in 1958, a year that quietly marked the end of an era. It was the final year the United States Mint produced the iconic Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that had been part of American life for nearly half a century. The country was booming, televisions were glowing in living rooms, and nobody at the time suspected that a tiny production anomaly would one day turn a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure headline. Especially not a coin with no mint mark, quietly struck in Philadelphia, slipping unnoticed into circulation. Here's where the tension begins. During that final year, a small number of pennies were struck with extraordinary errors so subtle that they escaped detection, yet so dramatic that collectors decades later would compete fiercely to own them. These weren't damaged coins. They weren't worn-out mistakes. These were pristine anomalies, born at the mint itself. And in the world of elite coin collecting, that difference is everything. Now, let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Have you ever inherited a jar of old coins? A drawer from a parent or grandparent? Maybe a small box labeled old change that's been sitting untouched for years? If so, you're not alone. And here's the uncomfortable truth: fear keeps most people from looking. Fear of disappointment. Fear of, it's probably nothing. Fear of being wrong. But wealth doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards curiosity. What makes the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny so powerful is not just rarity, it's demand. Serious collectors don't chase common coins. They chase stories, condition, and perfection. And when a verified coin surfaces with the right strike, the right error, and near-flawless preservation, the market reacts instantly. Private sales, elite auctions, whispered negotiations behind closed doors. This isn't a hobbyist's game anymore. This is high-stakes asset collecting. And yes, before you laugh, this is the part where people usually say, "It's just a penny." That's the joke. That's the trap. That dismissive chuckle has cost people life-changing money. Imagine explaining to your future self that you once had the opportunity to check a coin worth more than many homes, and chose not to, because it sounded ridiculous. History has a sense of humor like that. By why now? Excitement kicks in, but so should urgency. These coins are not being made again. Ever. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or locked away in private collections. Supply shrinks. Demand grows. And the market doesn't wait for latecomers. When values spike, they spike fast, and quietly. The people who benefit are the ones who prepared before the headlines went mainstream. This is the turning point of the story, the moment of choice. Act 2 is always about realization. The realization that what you already own might be more powerful than what you're chasing. That wealth isn't always about working harder, but about seeing differently. That the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often knowledge applied at the right time. Collectors and investors understand something most people don't. Coins like the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny are not just collectibles. They are portable wealth. They are historical assets. They are legacy items. And in a world of digital uncertainty, tangible rarity carries a unique kind of authority. When demand reaches this level, the question is no longer, "Is it valuable?" The question becomes, who is ready to sell, and who knows how? Let's reset for a moment. Quick reality check. If a single coin could change your financial trajectory, Would 10 minutes of attention be too much to give? Of course not. Because opportunity doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. And the people who listen are the ones who move first. Now we arrive at Act 3, resolution and momentum. This is where confidence replaces doubt. Where curiosity becomes action. The people who build wealthy lifestyles are not necessarily luckier, they're more decisive. They understand timing. They understand that markets reward those who act before saturation, not after. And right now, interest in rare American pennies, especially high-profile era coins, is not cooling down. It's intensifying. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies from the 1940s and 1950s, the smartest move isn't guessing their value. It's verifying it. The difference between a common coin and a record-setting one can be invisible to the untrained eye, but monumental to the market. And once a coin is authenticated, everything changes. Conversations change. Options expand. Possibilities open. Imagine turning overlooked change into financial leverage. Imagine converting a forgotten drawer into freedom, security, or legacy wealth. This isn't fantasy. It's already happening for those who took action. The only remaining question is whether you'll be part of that group, or part of the crowd that hears about it too late. Because one day, someone will casually mention that a penny sold for nearly $1 million, and someone else will suddenly remember the jar they gave away, spent, or ignored. Don't let that be your story. History rewards the prepared, the curious, and the bold. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is looking twice at a single penny.